Welcome to This Day in Everything Cool for April 27th. On this day in 1981, the computer industry was as quiet as a mouse. Xerox introduced their Xerox Star personal computer, which was the first commercial computer to come with a mouse. The concept of a mouse as a way to interface with a computer had been proposed as early as the 1950s, but Xerox was the first company to create the modern design, complete with 2 buttons. The Xerox Star computer itself was also revolutionary, coming with a Windows-based graphical user interface that made it much easier to navigate than contemporary text-based interfaces. Unfortunately, the Xerox Star wasn't a success, but it did catch the eye of Apple's Steve Jobs and Microsoft's Bill Gates. They blatantly copied the mouse and Windows-based interface with their own computers a few years later. On April 27, 1990, game maker Squaresoft further demonstrated that they don't understand the definition of the word final. The RPG Final Fantasy III was released on the NES, or Famicom, in Japan. It combined elements from the first and second games, featuring the experience point system from the first game and the hit point system from the second game. It also introduced new elements like the job change system, where players can change their character class. Final Fantasy III was the final Final Fantasy game developed for the NES, with the Super Nintendo being released later that same year. Unfortunately, it wasn't released outside of Japan, which created some confusion for Western gamers. A follow-up, Final Fantasy VI for the Super Famicom, was titled Final Fantasy III in North America and Europe due to the absence of the real Final Fantasy III. Thankfully, a remake of Final Fantasy III got a worldwide release on the Nintendo DS in 2006. The Zelda series began experimenting with new ideas on April 27, 2000. That's when Majora's Mask was released on the N64 in Japan, although a Western release didn't follow until later that year. The game was surprisingly different in tone and concept. The story sees Link transported from his home of Hyrule to an alternate universe called Termina, where all the characters are essentially doppelgangers of their Hyrule counterparts. This allowed the developers to save time by reusing the same character models from the previous game Ocarina of Time. Majora's Mask also played with the time travel mechanics of Ocarina. Players relived the same 3 days over and over again to try and stop a massive catastrophe, creating a sort of Groundhog Day mentality with a much more bleak and seemingly unavoidable outcome. It wasn't as well received as Ocarina of Time, but does have its fans and has since been accepted as one of the best in the series. A 3D remake was released on the Nintendo 3DS in 2015.